We're also, as you know, investing heavily right now in building a new settlement system for instant payments in the U.S. It'll be the first such major expansion of our core payment system since the 1970s. We found the case for this quite compelling for consumers, businesses, and just ensuring that all financial institutions have access to the payment system.
The first major advancement in payments since the 1970s is currently taking place, ladies and gentlemen, and we believe that public distributed ledgers like Ripple's XRP and Stellar's XLM are going to play a key role. Not only do I get a lot of confidence about this in regards to who is behind these projects, who the early founders are. We're talking about the same people that enabled digital money on the internet. They're now the people that certainly initially invested in these two projects to enable a crypto kind of internet of value world that we are moving towards. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to dive over to a report that was published this year in January that we didn't get a chance to cover. And it is essentially published by the Faster Payments Council. Now, the Faster Payments Council has members like the Federal Reserve, BNY Mellon, Amazon, American Express, Goldman Sachs, Jack Henry, MasterCard, Netflix, North American Banking Company, Target Corporation, Visa, Walmart, etc. All of these individuals, and we've only mentioned a few of, potentially hundreds, are all working towards integrating a new payment system. And the reason I want to go over this is because it gives us confirmation in regards to public distributed ledgers playing a key role in all of this. In fact, it even goes as far as to mention both Ripple and Stellar specifically, just like Christine Lagarde did quite a few years ago now, as being useful technologies that, if not adopted, will end up cannibalizing the business model that already exists. And that aligns very much so with what Jerome Powell just said in regards to an innovation that is taking place. And he's talking about the integration of distributed ledger technology into the financial system to revolutionize and modernize it. Just like essentially what happened with the internet of information, which of course was sort of kicked off really in the 80s. 2008 or 2009, Bitcoin's first sort of production or going live took place in January 2009. Of course, the white paper was released in 2008 on Halloween. So you're talking October the 31st. So something monumental taking place. And the reason this channel exists is because, first of all, we believe that through investing, you can sort of use the system to your advantage and increase your sort of freedoms and your family's freedoms through financial education and investing. But also because we believe that crypto offers one of the best opportunities that there is right now, through it literally being the rails upon which value and money and everything is going to move in the future. So let's look at this report. This is from the G20 Cross-Border Payment Project, staying ahead of the curve and driving global change. Of course, this is from Faster Payments. This webinar took place on the 14th of January 2025, so that's this year. The agenda sets out a number of things. The panel speakers, we've got Managing Principal MG Group. We've got Barry Tucker, who's the Principal TransactionBanker.com. We've got Edward Bowles, who is the General Head of Government Relations and ESG, Wise PLC. And we've got Jennifer Lucia, who is the Senior Associate Director at the Federal Reserve Board. Now, we just listened to Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, essentially talking about, looking to innovate the financial system and enable it to more of a degree. And we know he's essentially talking about distributed ledger technology. I mean, the evidence is all over the place. It starts off by talking about pre-2020 environment in payments. Prior to 2020, efforts internationally to address shortcomings in cross-border payments were focused on specific issues, while the problem is multidimensional. Observed disparity across jurisdictions with respect to legal framework, states of implementation of relevant standards, maturity of banking systems, availability of payment services, and pace of change, amongst other key features. The challenges associated with cross-border payments were widely known, yet collective and coordinated action was a missing link. And we see some of this be solved, certainly in regards to standards, with the likes of ISO 20022, which cryptocurrencies just happen to be. Certainly XRP and XLM. And there's a variety of others out there, and we'll likely see more. Innovations in payments were on the rise, with 2019 being a pivotal year. New entrants were filling the space, or filling the space, where traditional payment arrangements were lacking. Facebook's announcement of Libra, a multi-currency stablecoin for cross-border payments use, was a call to action for the public sector. So they stopped Libra from happening. The team behind Libra essentially went on to form Sui and I think Aptos. So one's a layer 2 on Ethereum, one of course is Sui, which are doing some really cool things with their sort of language model. And in 2022, Saudi Arabian G20 presidency announced enhancing cross-border payments as a key priority. I believe that Ripple is the only crypto company in Saudi Arabia, or one of, maybe Circle also have jurisdiction there, but they don't have their own cryptocurrency, and that actually have a license within Saudi Arabia, and that was announced not that long ago. Cross-border payment landscape, faster, cheaper, and more transparent and inclusive cross-border payments would have widespread benefits for supporting economic growth, international trade, global development, and financial inclusion. The FSB identified 7 underlying frictions that together contribute to the challenge faced by cross-border payments with regards to cost, speed, access, and transparency. And actually, blockchain solves pretty much all of these. The G20 roadmap is something else that's mentioned. What the US market should essentially be looking at. It talks about a measured progress towards the targets. Very interesting. A working group engaged with different data providers to measure the KPIs. Swift, for example, very interestingly, FXC Intelligence and World Bank are the main data providers, as necessary data is supplemented by focused outreach and data collective efforts. It talks about a number of other things, further engagement with non-G20 jurisdictions. And then it talks about the evolution of cross-border payment program. In October 2022, the FSB published a prioritization plan and engagement model for taking the roadmap forward, reflecting the need to move to implement practical projects to achieve the targets by 2027. It's 2025. 2 years' time, they want to have this stuff implemented. And they're going to harness DLTs to essentially do all of this. And let's get onto that. So it talks about the addressable market of cross-border payments, which sits at $34 trillion total addressable market of ex-border payments. So 2 trillion is person to person, 15 trillion is small businesses, and 16 trillion is enterprises. And I believe that Ripple's XRP will deal with the enterprises, and XLM is going to deal with more local transactions. They were both essentially founded by the same people, the PayPal mafia essentially. But there's a key difference, and we're going to highlight that. You know, they're both going to do effectively the same thing, but with a different approach, and we're going to look at some confirmation of that. Also, the fact that, you know, we're talking about a $30+ trillion market that's going to be solved, and really we're just talking about payments here. We're not talking about more broadly the formation of the Internet of Value. There's never been a better time to be in the crypto space. Not only that, when you look at XRP and XLM, which is specifically mentioned here, they both have the same technical pattern, giving us some insane price predictions. You know, our price prediction for Ripple or XRP is $19.27. We've had that since it was 40 cents. And for XLM, it would shock you. I don't want to really... I will do a video on it later. Obviously, I've mentioned it to the patrons, but it's above $10, put it that way. And I actually think it could give you a higher multiple than XRP. Potentially, we can talk about that in a different video. Total addressable market of cross-border payments, 3% of 3 trillion, a lot of money not sitting in the sender or receiver account. So you've got to think the use and utility of crypto actually has a broader, or has way broader ramifications for the world as a whole. It's going to bring a lot of dormant capital back into the markets, so on and so forth. That's for a longer video. You know, we can talk about the Nostro Vostro accounts and them not needed to be pre-funded if you could implement something like Ripple's ODL, on-demand liquidity, so on and so forth. There's so many avenues we can go off this, but I want to stick to the topic at hand and not get too sidetracked. What could US domestic payment providers do to support the G20, G27, and G2030 targets? To support G20 targets for improving cross-border payments by 2027 and 2030, US domestic payment providers can align with the goals of enhancing cost, speed, accessibility, and transparency in cross-border transactions. How do they do that? What technology are they going to leverage? It's going to be distributed ledgers, cryptos, and they mention it here. Let's get into it all. Accelerated adoption of ISO 20022. The ISO 20022 messaging standard facilitates richer structured and interoperability data for seamless cross-border payments. Interesting. Complete ISO 20022 migration by aligning with Swift's timeline, which is this year, November, and ensuring readiness for coexistence with legacy systems, collaborating with instant payment systems. What did Jerome Powell talk about? Instant payments. Interlinking domestic real-time payment systems with international ones is central to the G20's vision for faster 24/7 cross-border payments. Working with organizations like the Clearinghouse, RTP, we know that Euroclear, we know DTCC are already actively integrating distributed ledger technology, and the Federal Reserve, FedNow, as they consider cross-border payment capabilities. Improve interoperability, fragmenting systems, idle impede seamless cross-border transaction, standardized APIs and payment infrastructure to ensure connection with global payment system. It could be something like Quant or something like that there. Reduce costs and enhance efficiency. The D20 target calls for a reduction or reducing the average cost of cross-border transactions to below 1%. What technology do we know that does that? Well, they give it to you here. Leveraging blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, DLTs, to minimize intermediaries' cost and reduce friction. Every single day here on this channel, we give you more and more evidence that the future is one that operates on a distributed ledger. It then goes on to say, focus on financial inclusion. Crypto does that. In fact, that was Larry Fink wrote a letter to his investors at the start of the year. And he'd essentially said that the democratization of markets is going to be enabled by DLT. You know, there's, I think, is it 60% of people that have access to bank accounts? Or it's not 60, it's around about 2 billion people, so not 60%, but they have a mobile phone. They don't have banking services or credit cards or debit cards, around about 2 billion people. All they need is a mobile phone. They've now got access to it all with this technology. You're going to bring on a hell of a lot of capital. I mean, the ramifications of this technology go far beyond just making us rich as holders, but enriching the entire financial system. And it's not all good. Broader access to affordable payment services for underserved markets is a priority for the G20. I think XLM stands out more in that department. Expanding services to smaller financial institutions and non-bank payment providers to reach unserved communities. Enhance compliance and risk management. Talks about a number of things. Of course, we're going to need that. Improve transparency. Lack of transparency in cross-border payments leads to unpredictable costs and delayed. Well, what are public blockchains? If nothing else, transparent. They're a lot more than just being transparent, but they are inherently transparent. Offer real-time tracking of cross-border payments via solutions like Swift's GPI and blockchain, and provide customers with upfront visibility of exchange rates, fees, and delivery time. Promote, here we go, inter-industry collaborations. A collective ecosystem ensures alignment with global initiatives and technological advancements. Partner with fintechs and startup innovators in cross-border payments, such as, let's zoom into this, RippleNet and Stellar. They are spelling it out for you. Who were the two cryptocurrencies that Christine Lagarde specifically mentioned in regards to being useful, and if not adopted, ending up having your business or your model cannibalized by? Ripple and Stellar. XLM, XRP. By the way, if Jed McCaleb really fell out that badly with XRP, why did he call it XLM? That seems a bit close, doesn't it? Why use an X at the start? I know that is just something very small that I think about. He didn't fall out with him. He was assigned a different role, I believe. And if you look at who's behind, how did Ripple start out? It started as OpenCoin. OpenCoin then became Ripple, that was headed by Chris Larson and Jed McCaleb. Then they split. He went to go and form XLM, and of course Ripple, continued with XRP. I had the same infrastructure up until the Stellar consensus protocol kicked in. I've done dives with this on Patreon. Do become a patron, guys. Well worth the money you pay for it. Educate and engage stakeholders, so on and so forth. And I think here we have pretty much all the evidence that we need to suggest that these cryptocurrencies are going to play a role. And it really winds me up because people always talk about what's the difference between, there's a kind of beef between XRP and XLM. If you take that stance, you're small-minded and you don't see the bigger picture here, because they are very similar and trying to do the similar thing, but there are differences, and actually they accompany one another in regards to the overall picture. And I believe between these two technologies are going to have a lion's share of actually being the rails that sort of remittances and payments are taken upon. This is from essentially an article that was done a while ago, and it talks about the key differences. It also talks about the $35 trillion addressable market of cross-border payments that this article that was released this year highlights. It says Ripple and Stellar both focus on improving cross-border payments and have their own strengths. Cross-border payments are projected to surpass $35 trillion by 2023. Ripple XRP focuses on working with banks globally to eliminate intermediaries when competing completing transactions between them, enabling quick and low-cost transactions through their blockchain network. Ripple has more than 100 banks globally, and this is outdated, by the way. There's way more that have signed to join the network. But individuals and certainly SMEs are allowed to use the network freely. On the other hand, Stellar XLM does not have an extensive relationship with banks globally, as their focus is to reach poor and less developed areas. What did that paper just talk about? And enable unbanked people to interact with global economies at a low cost. Both these cryptocurrencies use their currency to facilitate cross-border payments within seconds, where currency is converted to XLM or XRP tokens and then converted again to the destination currency. We couldn't spell this out any more clearly. And what I want to do now, specifically in relation to the Faster Payments Council, is actually refresh you guys on what Pat Thielen had to say as a representative of Ripple on this exact matter, and having been chosen to essentially enable all of this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pat Thielen. I'm the Vice President of Global Account Management at Ripple. We truly believe that there is an internet of value coming, much like the internet provided with communications and email in the 90s and through the beginning of the millennium. Today, the payment system is advancing. And unlike a lot of the other crypto players in Ripple's space, we truly believe that the revolution is going to occur from within. So the ecosystem that the U.S. Faster Payments Council has put together will be those players that will make sure we advance the industry. The working groups that are coming out, it's the cross-border, the QR, the directory model. These are really opportunities to take that user experience, the interoperability that has been designed in the other initiatives, and really apply it to real-world problems. Many countries have leapfrogged the U.S. in real-time payments, so this is a real opportunity for us to leverage a body like this. The playing field is set, and you can either sit on the sidelines or suit up with U.S. Faster Payments Council and change the game.
I don't need to say anything else, do I? I mean, it just couldn't be more obvious at this point. I've seen enough. I've been in this industry. I've seen this industry change a lot. I was an early Bitcoiner, and I don't believe that the original principles that this industry set out to achieve are the ones being followed now. In fact, it's doing the opposite. Instead of combating the financial system, it's enhancing it. And there's going to be key players in that, and with that, a major opportunity. That's it from me, guys. I don't need to say anything else. The writing's on the walls. The evidence is there. And this is just one piece of evidence. There's a lot of it. That's it from me. I'll see you all in the next one.